This Die of Death update is just a glow up. Now wait, before all of you skin me alive and crucify me, let me explain. I'm not saying this update is bad or horrible or anything like that. In fact, it's the complete opposite. Is it perfect? No, but I do think it's a huge step in the right direction for the game. I've spent a good amount of time playing after the update, and I've got plenty of thoughts about new content, the rework mechanics, and of course, the parts that still need some work. So, in this video, I'm sharing my own opinions and my own experience with this update. We'll go through the good, the fun, and the bad. Sounds good? Alright, let's get into it. There's honestly a lot I want to praise about this update, from its creativity and innovation to how much more fun the game has become. I could probably spend 3 minutes talking about everything, so instead, I'll focus on the highlights that stood out to me the most. The first thing I want to mention is the new abilities. They're all unique in their own ways, with the biggest example being reroll. It's essentially a gambling ability where every use gives you a random skill. You can use that skill once and then it cycles right back into reroll, making every encounter feel unpredictable. It adds a layer of excitement because you never know what you'll get, forcing you to adapt on the fly instead of relying on the same strategy every single match. It's one of those abilities that perfectly captures the chaotic nature of the game while still being surprisingly balanced. I also want to talk about the many ability reworks. A lot of older abilities receive meaningful improvements. For example, Adrenaline now gives nearby allies a speed boost, while Dash can knock killers back. These changes allow abilities that were previously very selfish or situational to provide real supports for the rest of the team without feeling weak or useless. Instead of pressing a button to just save yourself, you now have opportunities to help your teammates survive as well, which makes teamwork feel much more rewarding. Overall, these changes make the gameplay feel much more dynamic. The developers didn't just add more abilities for the sake of adding content, they actually gave players more meaningful choices during a match. While not every new mechanic is perfect, I genuinely think this update pushed the game in a much healthier direction and shows that the developers are willing to experiment instead of playing it safe. Next, let's talk about the kill reworks because my god, they actually make these killers way more fun to play. Let's start with Pursuer. They are now a proper stealth rushdown killer, and I absolutely love the direction they took. Stalk now gives Pursuer the mobility they need to sneak up on suspecting civilians, while also giving them Lunge, which deals devastating single target damage, and Chomp provides a solid splash damage when multiple people are grouped together. The entire kit now revolves around ambushing your prey instead of mindlessly running at people, which fits the whole stealth Apex Predator fantasy much better. It finally feels like you're hunting your victims instead of simply chasing them. Then there's Harken, who probably received the biggest overhaul while somehow still feeling like the regular Harken. The biggest difference is that you now get to choose when to enter her rage state instead of having it open automatically and having some newer moves. That one change alone adds a surprising amount of depth because it gives you more control over your fights. On top of that, Harken now leans much harder into the resource management archetype. You have to build up your rage meter while also carefully managing your health, which isn't exactly easy considering she has the lowest health pool out of all killers.
Now I'm gonna hit you with that? No? Okay, cool. Yes, sir.
If an organized team decides to become a fighting squad, Harken can get melted incredibly fast. It creates this really interesting risk versus reward playstyle where timing your transformation becomes just as important as your mechanics. Now let's talk about Batware because I'm convinced they went to fight Akuma and learn the Shun Gokusatsu. Bolt is absolutely insane now. As long as you're within a range of a computer, you can keep chaining Bolt over to another computer and over again. It also has a much larger turning radius and a noticeable speed increase, allowing Batware to just zip across the map and snowball incredibly hard once they gain momentum. It perfectly captures the aggressive and snowball killer they were always trying to be. That said, I do have one major complaint. You can no longer destroy the computers. And honestly, I think that's a really bad change. I'll explain why later because it's probably my biggest criticism of the reward. But who knows, maybe the time this video goes live, developers will have to change it. Then we have Kildred, who basically got promoted into a full-blown bullet hell boss. The drones no longer explode when you get close. Instead, they fire rockets at nearby civilians. Their aim isn't perfect, so it's not impossible to dodge, but it constantly forces you to stay aware of your surroundings. It makes every match against Killthreat feel chaotic in the best way possible. And it feels the zoning archetype the developers were clearly going for. Oh, and Killthreat can now dive bomb people because apparently rockets were enough. Honestly, this section might as well be the good 1.5 because it's almost entirely positive. Instead of talking about balance or gameplay, I want to highlight little additions that simply make the game more enjoyable to be around.
You can now become butt booty naked as the civilian thanks to the customization. Yeah!
First off, the lobby got a massive expansion and I genuinely love it. It's actually a place worth exploring now. There are multiple NPCs scattered throughout the lobby that you can interact with and it'll share some bits of information, world building, and more about the game. It's a small addition, but it gives the game a lot more personality and makes the world feel more alive. Speaking of extra content, there's now an arcade room, and honestly, I wasn't expecting this at all. While waiting for the next match, you can play a parody of Five Nights at Freddy's or even Cookie Clicker just to kill time. It's completely unnecessary, which is exactly why it's one of those features that nobody asked for but somehow makes the downtime between matches much less boring. For all the lore nerds out there, and yes, I am proudly including myself in that group, there's also a brand new library. It contains information about the killers, abilities, maps, and the game's overall world. Considering how scarce the lore used to be, having everything collected in one place is a huge improvement. If you're the type of player who enjoys reading through every detail, you're going to have a great time. Finally, we have what is objectively the most important feature in the entire update, which is going to be the desktop bombs. Hidden away in the fun settings, you can enable these little screaming chuds that bounce around your screen while you're playing. And because of the developer's apparent belief in complete sensory overload, you can have up to 50 of them active at once. Because clearly finding Killthreat while rockets are flying everywhere while I'm blaring and the teammates are screaming wasn't enough noise already.
Wait! Don't turn on the light!
The first thing I want to talk about is the optimization. Ever since the update dropped, the game has felt noticeably laggier and choppier than before. I honestly don't know what happened under the hood, but performance definitely took a hit in my experience. Random frame drops, stutters, and occasional hitching have become much more common, even on maps that used to run perfectly fine. Now, to be fair, this is probably the easiest issue to fix out of everything I'm about to mention. Optimization patches are pretty common after major updates, so there's a decent chance this will already be addressed by the time you're watching this video. Unless your name is Tower Defense Simulator. The next issue is the maps. Now, I'll actually give the developers some credit here because I have absolutely no idea how they managed to pull this off. Somehow they made the maps feel small, claustrophobic, and massive at the exact same time. Take Augury Exhibition for example. That map genuinely feels like I'm trapped inside that one Kinger music video by CG5.
Wait! Don't turn on the light!
Every hallway somehow loops into another hallway. There's stuff everywhere, and despite the map technically being pretty large, it constantly feels like you're boxed into tight spaces. This also creates another problem that I mentioned earlier with badware. Remember how I said I didn't like the fact that the computers can no longer be destroyed? Well, this is exactly why. Badware is designed around placing computers across the map and using them to chain bolt for insane mobility. On these newer maps and reworked ones, there are so many tight pathways and high traffic areas that a well-placed computer can cover an absurd amount of ground. Since survivor can't destroy those computers anymore, Badware gets to keep that map control for the entire round, making an already strong snowball killer even stronger. It isn't impossible to play against, but it definitely feels much more oppressive than before. So, is this the biggest and the best update in Roblox asymmetric game of horror history? Not really, and honestly, I don't think it was ever trying to be. Look, I get why this update was so heavily anticipated. The developers have been teasing it for a long time, and naturally, expectations were through the roof. But after spending a good amount of time with it, I don't think I'd call it a massive content update. I'd call it a massive glow up. And I don't mean it as an insult. Don't get me wrong. I genuinely love this update. The killer reworks are significantly more fun, the new abilities are creative, the lobby finally feels live, and all of the little quality of life additions give the game so much more personality. At the same time, there are still issues with optimization, hitboxes, map flow, and a few balance decisions that I hope get ironed out in the future patches. No update is perfect, especially one of this scale. And I think these are the kind of issues that can realistically be fixed over time. I guess my only real criticism is that I expected a little more. Not because I'm being greedy, but because of how long this update had been hyped up. I was expecting something that would completely reinvent the game. Instead, what we got was a huge refinement of everything that was already there. And honestly, after thinking about it for a while, I don't think that's a bad thing. Instead of reinventing Dial of Death, this update refined it. It polished mechanics that had been showing their age, breathed new life into older killers and abilities, and added a surprising amount of charm through the lobby, lore, and all the fun little side features. The game simply feels more complete than it did before. To me, this feels like Dial of Death's version of the Nodi update. The moment where the developers finally tackled months of aging mechanics, polished the core gameplay, and built a much more stronger foundation for everything that comes next. It's less about adding endless amounts of new content and more about preparing the game for its future. And I think that's why I keep calling it a glow up instead of a content update. The game still feels like Dial of Death, it hasn't lost its identity, instead it feels like the best version of itself so far. If the developers continue building on this foundation while addressing the remaining issues, I genuinely think Dial of Death has an incredibly bright future ahead of it. This update gives me confidence that they're willing to revisit old mechanics, experiment with new ideas, and keep improving the game instead of letting it stagnate. So, overall, I'd call this update a huge success, not because the biggest update the game has ever received, but because it's one of the healthiest updates the game has ever received. And so that was my review of the newest Dial of Death update. Thank you all for watching, like and subscribe for more, we are so close to 10k, and I'll see you all on my next video. Goodbye!